Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Got Scott Kidd and I here. We are going to record episode number 14. Man, this has been such an exciting journey. I got to say, through all the trials and tribulations of different things, just like getting onto this podcast has taken almost 10 minutes to get done
hmm
because of all the things that stop us resistance, lack of internet connection, all these different things. And I got to say, I'm proud to say that the theme of today is all about choices. We are a sum of the decisions we make and don't make. So, Scott, man, you really helped frame this today. So tell me what's on your mind. What really brought this to your attention?
Well, first of all, thanks again. Be here with you. Well, thanks again for being here. I really appreciate being here in this episode 14 of the Inner Compass podcast. I was just thinking about this recently, just about all the choices we do and don't make that could become our lives and everything else. I thought through my life about some of the choices that I made that were some were a lot better than others, and some were not so favorable. And then some of the choices that I didn't make, some of them, the choices that I didn't make, had a larger effect on what I was doing rather than the choices I did make. So
Mm,
I thought that, the younger me needed to hear this. Like sometimes maybe you don't need to make a choice right away, because I made a lot of hasty decisions. And
yeah.
then a lot of times not making the choice left me in a position where I was exposed, or it was a bad situation. I should have just removed myself hanging around the wrong people, or doing the wrong thing, or making the wrong business decision. And it just goes to show you that even the small choices that we do and do not make, like we decide not to go to the gym, or not to eat healthy, or just not to do the thing that for someone else, that those have sometimes bigger effects on us than anything else. And a lot of times the thing that resonated with me the most was these choices that I didn't make. Like I've talked to more and more people later on in life, and they regret more of the things that they didn't do, or that they chose not to do something, or they didn't make that choice. So, I wanted people to realize that, those all those little things and all those big things that we do and don't make a choice on make a difference, and that whole sum becomes our entire life. So as we put it all together,
It
that
really does.
those choices, or a lack of them, make our next steps.
Yeah, I think that for me, the compounding effect of not making choices has resulted in issues as well. So, you know, if you're procrastinating on some of the small decisions on whether, which I think it's a big decision, like going to the gym, I'll go
Yeah,
tomorrow. And
yeah,
then you do that for a while and they just have a very large compounding effect. And I think that I know that indecision, you still made a decision,
hmm
but you may have made the wrong one. So those small choices that lead to big shifts are really what's magical. And I think we have to lean into and say, okay, do I make the easy decision to not go to the gym, or do I make the hard decision to even go for 15 or 20 minutes? I still went, and it was better than being too busy to go. And I'm just using the gym as an example because we both were very healthy. We work out. And I think it's super important to make decisions every day. And just like, we could easily abandon ship on this podcast right here and said, the internet's not working, things are not right. Um, it may not work out very well, but we're still doing it. And I think that's the thing is you got to make small choices that sometimes are hard choices and just continue to do that
yeah,
until it's just a compounding effect.
yeah. It really is the compounding effect. And I'll piggyback onto your gym concept. Like if because it's just a reminder that consistency beats intensity over and over again. If you go to the gym, you work out intensely for 2 hours. you're probably going to be so sore the next 3, 4 days, you may not go to the gym. But if you go for like 20 minutes or 30 minutes throughout that whole week for, 4 or 5 times, you've been consistent as you're making that decision and developed a routine. It's those small actions of not talking yourself out of going to the gym. And then that leads to other things like, well, I worked out today, so I feel a little healthier, so I should probably eat a little healthier. I'm a little sharper. So you make those other decisions that become, a big part of what you're doing. And if you make those conscious small choices over time, that gets you a lot further than just intensely doing something really heavily that one time. Because you're probably not going to, if you worked out once a week, that's not as much of a factor as if you went 5 times that week. That's that compounding effect that you're talking.
Right. Yeah, I think first we have to believe that we have a choice, right? Even in tough circumstances, we have a choice. I think we always have a choice. I think
And
some of us,
there's a lot of times where, we definitely do. And, same thing, we were having some issues here and we had the choice whether to keep going or pack it in, but we chose to keep going because that's how we are. We want to finish it through. And that comes from, like, stepping away and stepping into the fear, not letting our ego or anything like that allow us to go, well, maybe let's just not do this, because then that might develop a habit of, oh, we'll do that next time. We'll do that next time.
sure,
And then as the next time never comes, and then you never end up doing any of it. And then you've probably missed out on all these things that, would have probably made a change in your life or made you feel better. Because I know, like, had we packed in, I know I won't get as much energy from doing this podcast, and I won't get as,
right,
feel
right,
as good. It kind of, for me, I know it sets me up for the weekend, and it puts me in a good mood. I finish the week strong, even though I still work sometimes on Saturday and Sunday doing other stuff, but it keeps my mindset clear, and then it helps me make those other choices that are going to, affect myself, my family, and everything else, to where we can just kind of keep going. You just have to step into the fear, or step over the fear, or step around it to make those choices.
absolutely. And you talked about your younger self for a minute. I want to ask, what's a moment where a choice or lack of one that you've seen at that very moment that completely changed your trajectory? What was that?
Say that again.
What's a moment where a choice or a lack of one completely changed your trajectory?
Well, I would say one choice that really highly impacted my life was getting married to my wife. And it's been 21 plus years, and, 2 great kids. And, a lot of people think, you get married, life is over. Well, I think it's, we're just getting started, when
That's
that
that.
happens, because we become the man that she knew I could be.
Yeah. 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 I would agree. I think the same for me, man. That my greatest business partner, other than Jesus and the man above, is definitely my wife. She's my why. And she really does. She's my rev limiter. She's my guiding principle. And life really got magical when we decided to, get hitched, as they say, to get married and become as one unit. That's really where the mindset and the identity really shifted for us. And, it took stepping outside our comfort zone a lot of times, but it's been magical.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely the case for me, because, we have to have those people in our lives that are going to actually keep us balanced, keep us reminding us what our why is and why we're doing these things. And it's because of those people in our lives that we do all these other things that we know that we can do. And sometimes they're the ones that tell us, hey, you can do that. You look at all this other stuff you did. This is going to be easy. It's not going to be without hardship, but you're going to, because I know with my wife, and I'm sure with yours as well, you get that certain amount of support, the way we support each other, and, like, together we're something different, but we're also much greater.
Yes. Yeah. I would completely agree, man. I think that, you know, we sometimes find our greatest, I would say, how do I say this? We in those times, sometimes our greatest weakness because we're not using or leaning on the shoulders of the ones that are close to us. And that can really cause things to, say the ego gets in the way and you're like, man, I just need to figure this out by myself. But at the same time, there's somebody else,
Hmm.
including maybe your spouse, that could help you through this season. And I think it's just a practical thing that we have to continuously lean in on to say, I don't need to do this alone. There's always somebody that can
Hmm.
help me.
Yeah, and sometimes, well, actually, a lot of times I know in my life, like I was struggling with something, and then I just told somebody else about it, and they looked at it really simply, and they said, "Well, why don't you just do this?" And the choice was always there, but I was too tunnel vision on that thing, and then you say, "Oh, geez, I should have just asked you weeks ago," because I was losing sleep. I was just hemming and hawing back and forth with everything, and I kept it inside myself when I could have just asked somebody else. And it's on the boats and stuff. We have that saying, let's put another set of eyes on it. And a lot of times that's all we need is to have somebody else take a look at it, and they'll look at it through fresh eyes, and they'll probably see. They're not looking through it that tunnel vision or anything. They're looking at it from a new, fresh start. So they're wide open. So their eyes are wide open. Oh, well, just do this, and then, you know, I ran into that a lot with the tech world. People would just say, "Oh, just press F4 or whatever." Like, man,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's like I was ready to smash this computer into pieces, and I knew
Yeah.
that wasn't going to fix
No, that
anything.
wasn't it.
And they were
I
just,
think
oh, just
that there's some real practical framework that people could apply for some better choices. And some of the tools in decision making that I've used for tools, I think number one would be pause. Number two would be
hmm
perspective. And I think last would be purpose. And I really let me think
hmm
about the pause. Sometimes the best thing you can do is not speak and
Yeah.
just think and let it soak in and go, okay. And then I think the next thing is put things in perspective. Compared to what?
hmm
Okay. Is this a bad situation? Well, compared to some other things, no, this isn't that bad. And then the other thing is what's the purpose behind this? What's the real driving force to make this decision? And if we think about purpose and we think about other people's lives, especially if we think about through the lens of regret, we definitely don't want to make choices that we will regret later. So sometimes it really takes you back for a minute and say, oh, we need to pause. We need to think about this. We need to put this in perspective, and then let's put some purpose behind it and see what can we really do here.
Yeah, and I think it's to piggyback onto what you were saying. Where is this like I can see this through, like, I'll have make this decision, will have no regrets. Is it in alignment with my purpose? Is it in alignment with my why? Is this the reason why I'm doing it? If it's not, maybe you need to take another step back and say, maybe I don't need to be doing this. Maybe at another time, but maybe not ever. It just kind of keeps you, in that thing where you're not going to have that analysis paralysis, or you're not going to be able to, you're going to be able to make that decision, because if it's in alignment with your purpose, it's probably a no brainer that you're just going to go start doing it. But if it's not, and you have to pause for a long time, that means it's not something that's in alignment with what you need to be doing. Once you get through that, then just take the little actions, take the small step. What's the smallest step you can take in that direction? Because sometimes if you're hesitating, if you take a big step, you just might freeze up or whatever. What's the decision that's going to get you there?
100%. I think about analysis paralysis sometimes can be the greatest thing that stops us because Some people just refuse to move until they figure every single piece out. But let's be honest,
Hmm.
the perfect business plan is never the one you started with.
No.
It's always evolving. I think the simplest way is just move and
Yeah.
figure it out on the way. Kind of have a little bit of guardrails on what you're doing, but guide yourself through. Okay, this is what's going on. This is what I need to do, and just say, hey, as long as I don't hurt anybody
Hmm.
mentally or physically, let's get going.
Yeah.
And hey, if we got to get halfway down and start over, okay, we're gonna have way more education to make better decisions in the future, but let's not get stuck at the starting line.
Yeah.
Let's step across the starting line and then go, all right, let's go.
Yeah, you can't have a perfect plan in you can't have a perfect plan in an imperfect world. Done is better than perfect. Just get it moving in the right direction, and you'll figure out what works and what doesn't works. Because it as along the way you'll build a little more confidence as you get into it, and you'll get to a point where you're like, yeah, I can do this. And you can look back and go, hey, I am doing this. And then it'll kind of build, and you'll get confidence, and you'll be able to move a little better because you'll have made those decisions in the middle of everything that have stemmed from you getting that knowledge from making those steps. Whereas if you haven't started, then you won't know what any of those decisions are like or what they need to be.
2000%, man. 2000%. So, what are some things that you found that you could look back on? You could go back to the memories and you could say, man, what's the one decision that I almost didn't make, but you're grateful for you did it?
Well, the one thing that started my yachting career was I almost didn't, getting on this boat to Fort Lauderdale. I almost didn't go. I hemmed and hawed back and forth, but I said, you know what? And I would always say, what's the worst that could happen? Because it couldn't be any worse than now. I'm flat, busted. I'm in the negative, lost my business, lost. And it's like, if it gets worse than this, I already don't have anything. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
you know, but I do have to say this, it's with, at that point in my life, I was living at a place that, no one else was there. My friend gave me a car to drive. Went, either start the car and coast down the hill, or I'd walk down the hill. But I knew if I got to his place, I'd make enough money to get back or do something. So I said, well, let me just give this a shot. And I almost didn't make that choice, but that was a life changing event. After that, I got to Fort Lauderdale and realized that this was something that I could do. And I didn't even know it was a career before that. And it ended up that it been, was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Is then I met my wife, got into real estate, all these other business opportunities and everything else that came arise from that one decision. And it's something that you never know what you think might be the worst thing that's going on for you might end up being the best thing that ever happened to you or happened for you.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I know for me, there was a time where I had several friends that had already left their jobs that, we worked together and we had a lot of fun working together in our W-2 job. And I seen them leave and start their business. And I always kept the security of, being employed, but running my business in the afternoon. And I knew that the calling was I needed to leave everything else besides my one business. And throughout that one business, yeah, it definitely retired me, but I always had the calling to be just 100% in the real estate vertical. Well, that mean I had to separate from my DNA, which was diesel fuel and oil and high performance and gasoline and race fuel in the veins, to stop doing that type of business to be 100% in the real estate development world, the real estate investment world, and doing multifamily and all the things we do today. Well, that was a little bit of a, man, you know, what if this doesn't work out? And then I thought, well, I can always go back to the old life. And I think that was the decision that really helped me to say, well, look, what could go wrong at the end of the day? Could I fall flat on my face? Yeah, but I just got a lot more education. And I think that was really for me was just having that confidence to say, you know
Hmm.
what? I'm confident what I'm at doing right
Hmm.
now. Maybe not the best future for my retirement. And I'm not helping a lot of people. But yet, however, if I switch and pivot my focus, I need to have the courage to just go into this field until I get the confidence. And I think that was the biggest
Hmm.
thing for me was that I had to be courageous enough to say, I may make the wrong decision, but I'm going to make a decision. And I'm glad I did today because looking back now, I've helped a lot of people in this game.
Yeah, and I think that's a testament of just being consistent and making the small choices that just keep going every day. The choice that you made that you're going to help people do things that it just keeps getting better and better and better. It keeps building on all those choices, and it's I'm glad you made that choice. I'm glad I made the choice I made, and it just keeps getting better and better. And I know we're just getting started because there's just so much runway out ahead of us. There's just a long, long road ahead of us as far as like what we can do and what's possible.
Yep. I would definitely encourage our listeners to reflect on one choice that they've been avoiding and to make that commitment and the taking action either over the weekend or this week.
Hmm.
I can promise you the decisions I decided to make, some of them I procrastinated on way too long and
Hmm.
they delayed my gratification, which sometimes, yes, you got to delay gratification, but I stood in the front of a blessing that was meant for me that I had to go through some changes to be able to say, you know what, I need to do this. I need to be being the yacht captain. I need to be doing these things in development. I need to be doing real estate funds. I need to be doing all these things. But there's things that we sit here and we say, I'm avoiding it because I've refused to take a commitment. So I would just
Hmm.
ask yourself, as a listeners, ask yourself, what is one decision that you've been avoiding that you could commit to and take action on this week? What's one thing you could do?
Yeah, I would say that the decision that you make or or don't make is definitely going to have an impact. So make sure that you make that decision this week and just go all in on it and make sure that you've thought it through and just go for it. You'll put the best things ahead of you if you just make that choice.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I would say, what would be the absolute best way for everyone to connect with our episodes coming out? Where would they find them, and how can they connect with us on the social media realm to also follow along in our 30-day challenge? Where are some platforms that people can find you, Scott? And I'll go after that.
You can find everything about me with investwithscottkidd.com, and you can find the Inner Compass podcast. It's on there, but you can find it pretty easily on YouTube. The Inner Compass podcast under my name, and we look forward to hearing from you guys. Please connect with us, and we'd like to hear what your feedback is from our 30-day challenge. You can find all of that on all my channels on the website. Really, I know I've had a great time doing it, and I look forward
Oh,
to
man.
doing it every day. And I'm getting ready to do today is day 19. Day
Yeah.
19.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been absolutely just such a journey, right? From the very beginning of the idea of starting these
Yeah.
episodes to what it's shaped into now has been just so much fun. And the challenge has definitely been a game changer for me. And it's always exciting to see your video, your perspective on things, and how you're applying it,
Yeah.
right? Just like the sleeping habits. And at the end of the day, if you want to connect with me, it's EddieAustinBEX.com, Eddie Austin BEX on all platforms. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear that you shared these episodes with someone and it made an impact in their life. Because what we want to do is we want to do great things and help other people. And Scott, I want you to finish it out with I love your ending to the show. So take over, my friend.
Well, thanks again for another great episode of the Inner Compass podcast. I'm Scott Kidd, and he's Eddie Austin. And as always, as a reminder, be clear, be grateful, and listen.
Love it. Y'all have a great day.